morning, everyone. So today we're going to be doing some Sashiko because people asked for that last time. And Sashiko is a beautiful form of Japanese embroidery that's used a lot in mending. I've just realised I should probably keep, yeah, I think that's everyone who's going to come along today. So we do these every single week, and these sessions are recorded as well, so you can watch them back later. And I'll show you today lots of different tips and tricks with Sashiko. So we've got loads of different patterns here, and generally they're all really lovely geometric shapes. So they all follow a pattern for the most part, where you use as little thread as possible. And there's this Japanese saying where if your thread is longer than your needle, then you keep it. And if your piece of fabric can hold 3 beans, then you keep it. So that's the kind of the importance of holding on to things. And so there's all of these different lovely historical techniques, and lots of them have names and kind of different things associated with them. So this is one where I've done a little bit of mending on it. And you can do it as simple as just a running stitch like that, or little crosses. So this is one that I did ages and ages ago. This is one of my favorites, and I really should by now know the names of all of these, but it's very tricky. There's a lot of names and they're in a language I don't speak, but you can get all of these lovely different patterns now. And this is one of the biggest ones I've done. This was, I think, the first bit of Sashiko, where you get this really lovely optical illusion where it's flowers but also circles, and it's just gorgeous. So traditionally this would have been done by drawing out a grid. So I've got, please show the back. Yes, of course. Right, Linda's asked if I could show the back. So the back of mine is quite messy, but generally with Sashiko, the rule is that you do a longer stitch on the front and a shorter stitch on the back, which doesn't always come across. Where's a good example of that? Like this one, the back of my fabric is always messy. I'm not a particularly neat sewer, but it doesn't have to be neat to enjoy it. So if you see how there's a few places where I've jumped across, but generally it is just going back on itself like that. And where's another one? This one should be quite a nice one. Yeah, that's a much neater one where you can see the jump across bits, but generally it's much smaller stitches. So a really good way to get started with Sashiko, if you're not used to, oh, you're very welcome, Linda. If you're not used to doing things like this, is to draw out some lines. I'm going to try and move this so it's not reflecting, annoyingly. Don't think there's a way I can do it without it reflecting on here. There we go, that's better. So there's lots of pens you can use too. So I really, really rate these Clover white marking pens. The problem with them is if I draw this on here, people always think it's not working, but it takes a few minutes to show up. The biggest problem with these pens is that they're about £7 each, and you do get through a lot of ink with them. So from a kind of value point of view, it's not the best. But a really good thing with them is that they don't smudge. Whereas if you use kind of more traditional fabric pencils, is if you're doing like a really intricate pattern like this, you're going to smudge it as you go. So we've got those. This is one that I've started using recently that was a little bit cheaper. I'm not actually sure what brand it was because I got it from a wholesaler. But these are really good. But I noticed after someone used one recently, the nib broke after about 3 uses. So that's where you get the value of spending more money on these. And what other ones have we got? So these kind of washable ones are really good as well. But if you're doing it on denim, which most people like to do Sashiko on denim, then that's not going to show up as well. So having a white pen is really good. But if you're doing it on anything lighter, basically any other marker pen that's washable is really good. Or some people may even have these pens already. These tend to be popular with quilters, and they're brilliant. A lot of people think that, if I get this, these are meant for being on paper, and you draw it on and then use the end to rub it out. So people always think it's like it's a rubber, but it's not. It's the heat created by this friction from this. So if you draw a pattern on some light fabric, then when you iron it, it disappears. But they're a bit controversial because some people don't like these because if you go into sub-zero temperatures, then it will reappear and stay. So if you live in a colder climate, or if you're doing this a lot on clothing, that's not the best option. Or if you're doing it on black, obviously. So a good way to start and learn. I don't tend to do this bit in workshops, if I'm honest, because it's a way that a friend I know does this a lot for her workshop. But I personally think it just takes up a bit too much time. So this is a quilter's ruler, and they're great because they're see-through. So if you draw a line like this, then most of these are always done in inches because a lot of quilting is done in inches, but this little section here is a centimetre. So if you line it up with the line done before, then you get lines that are perfectly parallel and really well spaced. So to start, you could just try doing a running stitch that's bigger on the front and smaller on the back. But I feel like that takes away from the amount of time that you can do other things. But traditionally, Sashiko would have been done on a grid. And I'll show you the way that I do it off grid. But I've got some really lovely books here that I'll show you, kind of books that I really rate on Sashiko. So this one by Seiki Iduka is really, really nice. It's more project based than a kind of general Sashiko book, but she's got some really lovely projects in it, as well as some really good diagrams on how to do the kind of grid technique. So traditionally, it would be drawn out like this. So a little bit smaller than a centimetre, but whenever I teach this, I do it as a centimetre because I think it's much easier. But there's all sorts of different grids that you can follow. So we'll draw out a grid. So this is where the quilter's ruler really comes into its own. And I always make the same mistake. I always start from this side and then realize I don't have anything to go against. So you start, if you're right-handed, this often feels a little bit weird. We're going to do some lines there. This is a lot bigger than I need. So you do your first one there and then move it across. All right, I've got a pile of books next to me that's making it a little bit hard. And so I'm guessing, let me know in the comments if you've found out about this because of woven, because I've been doing these for months and they've been really, really quiet so far. And I've covered all sorts of different things. But last session and this session, people have started to watch it live, which I'm assuming is, yeah, everyone's saying yes. Linda says yes, woven. And Jean has asked about the title of the book and the name of the white marker pen. So that book is Sashiko for Making and Mending by Seiki Iduka. And yeah, Rosie says woven as well. Everyone's saying woven. Fantastic. Oh, brilliant. Yes, that's so cool, Sarah. And Fashion Fusion CIC, I'll have to find you if you're on Instagram, because that sounds like the kind of thing that I'm interested in. And in fact, before I keep doing this, I'll show you the other books I've got with me. Ultimate Sashiko by Susan Briscoe. Oh, Estelle, lovely to meet you. And so Susan Briscoe is kind of like the I was about to say the goat of Sashiko. So greatest of all time of Sashiko, because she's done a load of really good basic books. She's like a really good source for things. And her books are really dense with information. She's written a few and different patterns, and it's just really easy to follow. And while that other book has really lovely projects in it, this is more kind of about the stitch and the history, and it's lovely. It's like my Sashiko Bible. And this one is a Japanese book that I found in a charity shop that Obviously, I can't read it, but it's got really good patterns, some very, very complicated patterns. Sarah says she's got that book, the last one, and that she bought it after my workshop, and that she bought a lot of stencils and added Sashiko to a lot of her denim clothes. That's brilliant. Yeah, I'll show the stencils in a bit, but I thought because I'm doing a whole session on it, we'll do it the other way first. Yeah, that one's really nice too, but I don't know where you would find that. And the other thing that I have, oh no, I had this out earlier. There it is. This is another Susan Briscoe one that I think this is brilliant. It's a deck of cards that has all of, like, not all of the patterns because there's so many, but it's got a lot of different patterns on one side, and then the other side, it's got how you draw them out on a grid and how you follow them. So, and it starts with the easier ones and goes to the more complicated ones. So I really, really rate this. It's a really kind of no nonsense approach. It's great. So I'm going to keep one of those out, I think. Let's go for that one. Sarah says she's experimented a lot and thinks the graduated shades of thread look amazing, and they really do. And this is a shameless plug. I've just bought tons for Thread Republic. I've got £400 worth of Sashiko threads, mostly up their variegated colours. Yeah, see this pen, the nib's already gone. This is the one that I don't know the name of, but oh yeah, someone asked about the brand of pens. So they are Clover, and generally I really rate Clover for everything they do. They do a really good range of things. So it's Clover friction markers, so friction but with an X. This one's also a Clover one. And there's a few pens that I'm going to order today because someone was telling me about them and I really like the look of them. So I might show you them next week. But that last one I used, the one that annoyingly has broken and doesn't have a name on it, it does draw really, really well. I just don't know what to do about the broken nib because it's not particularly good. Right, I'll do a small grid. I realise I'm filling this all out quite full on. But I'm not expecting in a workshop to fill all of that. So then you do the same thing going across. And on some of the patterns, you do diagonals as well. On this one, we won't. And I'll show you next, after we've done this, a really good way to untie the threads in a way that makes them not get really tangly. And I'm not showing any more of my peg loom today because Woven's been so busy that I've not actually had a chance to do a single thing on it. So it's looking very much like it did last week. So these lovely Sashiko threads. So the main difference between these and embroidery threads is embroidery threads have 6 strands to them. So when you do this with embroidery thread, it gets a little bit twisty turny and not quite as clear lines. And these are pure cotton as well. So slight differences, and they're a little bit more matte as well. So if you take the thing off and unfold it, there's generally a way that there'll be a little knotted bit on it like this. So open it out like that. And then that bit at the top, I'm going to leave it connected. And I'm going to snip through this bottom bit. And then, annoyingly, I'm not going to be able to find anything to tie this around, but separate them out. So you've got 3 strands. I'm going to take one out to use right now. So I'm literally just going to pull this through And then I've got one strand ready to go. And then the rest of them, I'm just going to braid together. So normally I put these on like thread bobbins, but I thought this is a really, really handy way. And this is generally what they do in Japan rather than putting them on bobbins. So I thought I'd show you this. And it just keeps them from getting tangly. And it just looks really pretty as well. And it might be the way that I start doing it soon. So I won't braid it all because I'm sure you all know how to do a braid, just a basic 3-plait braid. But that just keeps them from getting too tangly. Yeah, so I'm sure you get the idea. But often the way I do it, because for workshops, I like to have really, really organized boxes of bobbins, because I find if I bring this out at the start of a workshop, it will look really, really nice up till the end. And like Sarah was saying, the variegated threads are absolutely gorgeous, like these kind of things. So I'm going to cut a piece that's sort of, generally, the way I cut things is, so it goes from one, I've made a mess of that, one hand to your opposite shoulder is a really, really good length, and it doesn't get too tangly. And those are all of my templates that I'll show you in a little bit. And I've got over here my Sashiko needle book. So I've made this a while ago so that I know that all of my needles go back in here once they've been used. So they're slightly longer and thicker needles than you'd normally use. So they're really nice to work with. And I had a few, I had this all prepared earlier, and then I think, oh, there they are. Came in from a dance class and it all went to pot. So these ones are from a company called Olympus. So Olympus do most of the threads that I use as well. There's also a company called Tulip, and these are really, really nice. They're really sharp and they're more expensive. And I got them thinking like, let's give them a go, but they are really nice to work with. For the most part though, I get ones from, again, they're from Clover, and I don't have a pack of them, but it's same brand as this. And we sell those at Thread Republic as well. And you tend to be able to get a pack of 5 shorter ones or a pack of 3 longer ones. But I tend to just use the longer ones. And when you're threading it, fold it back on itself like that. And then put the needle eye over it and use your nails or fingers from the other side to pull it through. And you can double it up. So this design here, this one's doubled up, this one's single. So you can just see it's a lot bolder, but I'll show you just single threaded for now. I'm just going to check quickly. There we go. So we're going to tie a little knot in the other end. Oh, thank you, Rosie. Rosie said that's a really helpful tip from last week. And another one that is a good way, because I know sometimes people say they still find it really tricky. I'm really struggling to tie a knot today. I don't know why. I think it's just how busy Woven's been. It has thrown me a little bit this week. Is anyone going to any other Woven events this week? I know we've got 2 at the shop in the next 2 days. And Linda says she learnt that threading tip from her mum, but she would be horrified about the knots. That's fair. I just feel like though, if it ties a knot, that's great. So with a small piece of paper, fold it around like that. This might be too big actually. And then you can put the paper through. I folded it way too much. Oh, Estelle says she was hoping to go to Grey and Colour together, but living in South Yorkshire, it's tricky. Oh, well, I hope you do get to go to it. Oh, Linda says her mum wouldn't use knots at all. And do you know what? There's ways that I've done it in the past where you don't use a knot in Sashiko, but honestly, I always think it looks bulkier. So yeah, just put the paper. Sorry, I realized I did that and then speeded it up and didn't actually show you what I was doing because I was reading things at the same time. It really is such a neat trick. I love the paper trick. Put your thread in the paper. Don't make your paper as tall as I have because then it won't work. Oh, exploring colour at the loft space. I've actually not seen that. And Linda says, is that for when you can't find needle threaders? And yes, it is. But I always think you always have paper near you. So it's a really good trick for it. And I personally don't like needle threaders because of the amount that they break. So this pattern, if we're doing a really nice basic one like this, then it shows you where to start. So you do the outside bits first. So I won't do all of this one. So you bring it through. And generally with Sashiko, you want your stitches to be the size of a grain of rice, which you can take as you like. It could be sushi rice, it could be long grain rice, but rice is the general thing. And I never put it in a hoop because in Western embroidery, we tend to do things in hoops and put your needle all the way through to the back. But this was always done for purpose rather than kind of for it was more a utilitarian technique rather than an enjoyment based technique in the past. So they wanted to do it as quickly as possible. So it would be this kind of rocking technique where you go across, and if you see where my needle is, if I stretch it out, it's longer on the front, shorter on the back. And they have competitions in Japan for who can get the most stitches on one needle. So that's why we've got long needles as well. And you can get these thimbles, which I should have bought one of them up. It's very rare I use them. See if there's one in this box. Oh yeah, I think there is. So they're slightly different. Oh, I've just seen someone's in the waiting room. I hope she hasn't been there for long. So slightly different to normal things. So they just have a little gap in them like that. Where if you put your needle in there, you can just rock backwards and forwards and push it through. So I personally find this is a bit more annoying than helpful. I'm just going to move this because I've noticed it's made it a little bit of a weird colour. Let's actually change it to see if I can make it slightly different. There we go, that's probably a better colour for this. Yeah, that's a much better contrast. But then when you get to the end, you can use it to push it through. And then those variegated colours do all of the work and just make it look fab. But I'm seeing the contrast isn't quite showing stitches on here, but that's how it's looking. And the key thing with this is when you turn a corner, you try and keep it really, really even. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So when you get to this bit, you want to leave a little gap in that corner piece. And then jump across there. So there's a similar gap on that bit. And what I mean by that is that you don't have one stitch going into the corner and the other stitch missing the corner. I think on the card there's a really good example of that. Like on here, how there's these little gaps. So it's not meeting up because that would make it look like a much more solid edge. And the nice thing with ones like this where you work inward is that you do less stitching by the time you get to the centre. So I don't know if anyone's been to Chris English's City sessions at the Kirkwood charity shop in Huddersfield, but he was doing City workshops, which is similar to this technique I'm doing right here, where you quilt from the outside in a square, and by the time you get to the centre, it's much quicker to do, and you've done the hard work first. But what I'll do is move on from this because I feel like that technique takes care of itself. You're just following lines. But the main difference with that one would be if you were doing something like, let's find one, something where there's things on a diagonal, you would draw a diagonal line across as well, so you've got that to follow. Or if you had something like this one where it intersects, you'd mark off points. But I'll show you how to use templates, because generally I think templates are a lot easier and make life much more simple. So these have come along a lot. It used to be quite hard to get these in the UK, and there are like just a few very basic shapes. But I'm finding more and more now it's easier to get hold of different templates. So there's all sorts of different patterns, and it just makes it really, really accessible and quicker to do. And I've never had one of these patterns like break or anything, so all good. And you get some different ones, like this one is one from Japan. So with this, it doesn't mark out where the stitches are. You just draw the pattern on and decide how big you want the stitches to be yourself. And all of those ones are ones that I really, really rate. These are from, can't remember the name of the company, but those are really easy to get. These ones are from Japan Crafts, and Japan Crafts is where I order all of my Sashiko threads from, and she designed these ones herself. Really, really good. I'll put that in the comments actually. She's got so many good templates and things. But what I'd recommend avoiding is there's a few that I've got, like these ones are quite thick plastic. And when I first saw them, I thought, great, they're going to be really like not sustainable, but they'll be really sturdy. They'll last a really long time. But actually getting the pen through there is really, really tricky. So you don't get all of the stitch. And I find they've broken more pens than they've helped. So they're not particularly my favourite. But if I go with this one, I find the waves is often a favourite of people's. Get all of these, but yeah, I've got tons of them now. Put that out of the way. And that'll be the exact same thing, where again, I'm going to get one of my white pens. And you'll probably see with this a little bit clearer. Yeah, that's getting that out. It's very annoying. Having a ring light is really, really handy, but at the same time, when you've got a reflective surface, it's a bit annoying. Might just have to use it like that. So with this, you just scribble in each bit. So I'm using one of those clover pens. So if you were doing this to patch a hole, I think generally this is really, really good when something's starting to get threadbare, because then all of these little stitches over it will reinforce it. But if you put a patch behind an area and then put this on top, it's a great way of reinforcing it, because it's all of these little stitches that are just going to help hold everything together. And with a lot of these patterns, once you've done a small section, you can overlap it again, so you can repeat this pattern going whichever direction you like. But that's often easier to do once you've stitched it, because with it being fabric, as you draw on it, it's going to move. So I often find if you do like 4 panels of this, by the time you get to the end of one of them, it isn't quite sitting right. And that's the good thing with the grid, because if you draw that out as it is, It's not going to change. So Linda said, would you sew through both the patch and the garment fabric? Absolutely. So you would pin it on. Well, I would draw the pattern first before you put the fabric behind, and then you would, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a minute. So you would, if it was a big hole, put the fabric behind first and then draw it on. If it's a small hole, draw this onto the garment fabric first, and then put the patch behind and pin it in place. Because once you've got pins underneath this, it's really hard to draw through it and it warps it a little bit too much. So you can probably see on this, I think I've actually just missed out a section, but this colour will get stronger. But when you first draw it, it doesn't look like there's anything more. So that should develop fairly soon. I'm going to use the same fabric, not same fabric, same thread. And I'm just going to tie it off at the back. I can go back to this at another time. So if there's anything else that anyone wants to learn in other sessions, do let me know, because at the moment I've just been doing kind of different upcycling things every week. But I do all sorts of different kinds of repair, things like that. So I'm going to try. I've not actually tried this yet, but someone was telling me about a technique yesterday called a quilter's knot. And apparently what you do is it's almost like a French knot. Oh, and Sarah's mentioned Dorset buttons. Right. I knew someone had said to me recently that they wanted to learn how to do Dorset buttons. And I said, oh, I'll go away and have a look at it and see what I can do. And then I couldn't remember who had mentioned it. So I'll make a note that it was on this Zoom. Right. So we'll try this out. Might not work. So we're going to wrap around the needle as if you're doing a French knot about 3 or 4 times. You're going to come up through the back of the fabric. Oh, actually, no, that wasn't it. We're going to move the French knot down the needle to the end. Has it worked? Yes. And it does a neat little knot. This was just something that someone mentioned to me in a Stitch social yesterday. So we'll go in through the first stitch there. And again, you don't need a hoop or anything. We're just going to follow those marks. The nice thing here is you don't have to make up how long your stitches want to be, because we're just following this. But yeah, definitely look into Dorset buttons, because I understand the concept of them. I've just only ever made one from a kit before. Sarah said embroidery techniques would be good, and I'm very, very up for doing a kind of basic embroidery knot workshop on here, because I love doing stuff like that. It's really good fun. And Jean's asked if the sessions will continue after the end of the month, and they absolutely will. This is a bit of funding that we've got at S2R that's going on for a good few months. We're not going to do any in August. I've done that last stitch way too long, so I'm going to take it out. I'm just going to have a quick check of my diary to see when they are in July. So generally every month it tends to vary, just because my work schedule is a little bit off. So every month is different. So in July, they're going to be every Tuesday from 9 till 10, but they will be recorded as well. We're going to do the little fold back thing, because I prefer that to cutting a piece of paper, then push it through. Showed that to someone a few days ago and she's like a snake's tongue. And I was like, yeah, I guess like a snake's tongue. Yeah, so none in August, but they'll probably, I'm fairly certain we've got the funding for, I think it was 30 sessions, and I can't remember how many we've done so far, but we've got a good few months left. Fantastic. So when you get to the end here, sorry, I should have done this bit, you go underneath the fabric to get across because we don't want a straight line on those curves. How do people book on? So Jean's asked how people book on. If you email contact@s2r.org.uk, they will sort you out with a booking link. Because I think every month, I don't actually sort out the Zooms for it. That we've got someone else who does that. I just show up and deliver. I think there's a different meeting code every month and a different password every month, but then it will work for each session. So a really important thing about Sashiko is that because it's all a long running stitch, is if you pull it too tight, it looks like that. So you want to make sure that it's not ruching up too much. Also, Estelle, who runs Fashion Fusion CIC, has said that would I be happy to share these sessions to the community as part of Fashion Fusion CIC? Yes, absolutely, please do. And it's really good to know that you're doing sessions that encourage repair as well. With a project called Roots to Renewal. That's brilliant. Yeah, if anyone wants to look up Roots to Renewal, please do. And it's a good time to say if people are based in Huddersfield. So I know I mentioned this a lot, but I co-run a shop called Thread Republic. It's a textile scrap store. We run workshops there as well. So like we've got a conductive embroidery workshop tonight, and we've got one space left on that. I don't know if it's gone by now. We've got a natural dyeing printing workshop tomorrow, but that is fully booked. And then on Saturday we have a crochet workshop. Oh, that's Estelle said she's been following Thread Republic and loves what we're doing. That's really nice. And we're in a shop that is going to get knocked down eventually, so we're trying to work out what we do once that happens. So that variegated thread really shines on things like this. The annoying thing with denim is that I know on camera the white bits in the weave often show up and it can be hard to see, but I feel like that's showing up quite nicely. You basically just keep following the pattern. Does anyone got any other requests other than Dorset buttons? And in fact, I'm going to make a note in my diary now to look into that. And I'm going to make a little note of everyone's names because I have to send those in afterwards. So, the amount of times I've forgotten to do this until afterwards. So if your name is not on the not on your screen, could you please pop it in the chat? I'd really appreciate that. Just be a sec, slow at writing. And that'd be mainly someone whose name on it is Galaxy A40. Having your name would be fantastic. Thank you. Sarah Jones, fantastic. Oh, Linda says she's got lots of t-shirts where the neck ribbing is frayed and looks really tatty and they've got small holes. We can definitely do something around that. We can do some kind of upcycling things around t-shirts and ideas for things to make out of old jeans. Oh, still. Thank you so much, Carol. That's really useful. All right. Thank you. So with the denim thing, that's really interesting because at Thread Republic, we've got an upcycle challenge where we're doing a catwalk of things people have made out of old jeans. So that's been on my mind, and I do quite a few things out of old jeans. So we'll do some of that. And has anyone got any questions on Sashiko for the last kind of 15 minutes? Is there anything that you want me to go over again? Any product things that you want me to mention? I'm trying to think if there's anything else, because the best thing with it is you don't even need the templates because you can draw things out yourself. And if you were doing things like this, you would draw a grid and Trying to see if I've got something circular that I can use as an example, because obviously if you're drawing a grid, this is the bit that's really tricky. So you get something like, this is going to be way too big, but just as an example. Rosie said, what can be done with leftover snips of thread and cloth? That is a really good call. I'll have a think about that because it is something we've tried to think about at the shop before because we have so much spare thread. Yeah, I'll have a think. And Estelle said that she's done a lot of courses on Domestika, which might be of interest to others. I've never actually done any of their courses. I always get them advertised to me though. And Jean said, can you borrow grid templates from Thread Republic? And not at the moment, just because I do workshops all over the place so often that borrowing them would be really, really tricky to keep up with. But we do have some for sale. I think they're about £5.50 for one of them. So this circle is much too big for this. But if I line this up, trying to think actually, there must be something small that I can draw around because you can use like pennies and stuff for this, which is really good. Just gonna grab something. I think this might be, yeah, that will do. And another pen that you can get is disappearing pens. Jean said she's coming to the event on the 26th. Will the shop be open that night? Yes, anytime we run workshops, the shop is open. But I'm trying to remember which one the event is on the 26th. I think that might be the denim show. We've got so much going on at the moment that I'm genuinely like forgetting what we're doing. Fashion show, yeah, thank you, Jean. That's appreciated. Because there's two of us, well, there's three of us that run Thread Republic. One is on maternity leave at the moment. So like the fashion show is Julia's domain. So it's not burned into my head as much. Oh, brilliant. Some basic quilting. So I've actually not done quilting myself, but my mum has. The annoying thing is my mum doesn't live near me at all. So but I could do some, I'll have a look into it actually. I don't know if that's one that I would be able to do. But if I can, I will. But I know that I'm not a very precise person with my crafting. That may be coming across. So this is a very, very quick example of this. But if you had a more solid template, like a cardboard template works really well for this. Sarah says she's never done quilting apart from piecing hexagons. Quilting from scrap fabric would be good. Yeah, and I could definitely do one like I was mentioning earlier about the city quilting. Like I've done that before, and I I've done like borrow, which is similar to this. Then just said, why don't you just use the badge to draw around? That's a very good idea. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, so not perfect because I was doing that very, very quickly. But like for the leaf pattern, the flower pattern, wherever I've put that, that was a really big one somewhere. There it is. But for that, without a template, you can achieve the same sort of thing. So it would just be you'd follow the circles, all of the circles, and then it would get that sort of effect. But I do like the templates because they do just make your life easier, especially if you're like me, a little bit more slapdash. So this is one of the few instances in Sashiko where you jump across something. So from here, you would go across the back. So while all of these are really short, fairly neat stitches, this is going to be quite a long one. We've got a is at the shop I organise our workshop program, and we've got someone who's a quilter who does all of our quilting workshops. And I'm always like, if anyone asks me, I'm like, ask other Kim, she knows what she's doing. One day I should go to one of her quilting workshops, but could definitely do city and borrow quilting. And I'm also doing, in fact, I can show you a piece of Sashiko in action. I'll just run and grab it. So this is a quilt that my mum made for me about 20 years ago. And it was one of the first quilts that she made. So it was when she was still learning. And so it means a lot of it is starting to wear away because this has been on my bed ever since. And so there's been lots of little bits that have started to wear. So I'm going to change the colour of this light in case that sort of makes it a bit more visible. But I've been trying to do different Sashiko techniques in every square. Oh, Sarah says, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, my mum is really, really good, and she's even better at quilting now. But so I've got lots of different patterns on it. And this is more of a kind of borrow style, although borrow is like lots of small scraps. But a running stitch as well is just as valid as Sashiko. And this one I need to cut the end off. But I've just been doing this whenever I've had an evening free. I've had this sat on top of me and I've been working on it a little bit more. And it just feels so nice and tactile, because I should have said one of the main reasons that Sashiko exists is because this and borrow were done by kind of rice paddy workers in Japan. And it would be quite cold conditions. And often they would have garments that would go down different generations and would last hundreds and hundreds of years. And of course, quilting keeps warmth in. So if you've got loads and loads of fabrics, these little stitches are going to create little air pockets. So as you have these air pockets, they're going to keep you a lot warmer than if it was just layers of fabric. So that's where all of this comes from. And pretty much every culture around the world has a different technique that is just purely a running stitch in a different creative form. Like if you look at Spanish blackwork, that's very, very similar to Sashiko in its geometry and its patterns, but it's done more on like a counted cloth. Oh, thank you so much for all the nice comments on the quilt. It's really lovely, and it's so cozy. And she's made me another quilt recently. I've got a camper van, so that lives in there, and maybe one day I'll quilt over the top of that as well. But well, stitch over the top. She does all of the machine stitching and I do more hand-based things. But so to show this bit here, that's been another bit where I've jumped across diagonally. But you generally try and do it where you're using as little thread as possible. So you're trying to not cut things off and retie it elsewhere. And you try and get as much out of your thread as you possibly can. So the pattern for this one would be going across those top layers, so up to there, and then back on yourself like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've missed out that's important about Sashiko. So we've got all of the templates, pens, how to do a grid, how to do this. Trying to think. It's just got such a nice texture as well, because it's so just, I just love it. It's a great technique. I'm hoping to make, I mentioned this on last week's session, This isn't Sashiko, but it's other kind of mending things. My friend who does our quilt workshops, she was telling me, I was saying that I wanted to put all of my pieces into a book so that it's easier for everyone to see. And she was telling me about a slot and tab book. So I think I'm going to try and make that soon, where all of your pieces are cut out like these are. And it's hard to describe, but it's a book where it's got these little gaps in it. And then, I don't know, when I do it, I'll show you, but I've got all of these cut out ready to go so that they can go in my book. And so that's more of a kind of borrow technique where it's a piece laid on top. Got some honeycomb darning there, one of my absolutely favorite techniques. This is more a kind of applique thing. Linda said, if you were doing Sashiko on thick fabric, I'm guessing you couldn't do it like that. You'd have to work more like you do in a frame, down then up. You generally, because the needles are so thick, they're really, really sharp, especially the fancy ones I was showing you earlier, wherever they've gone. So they have got a small table and things go missing all the time. Yeah, like these ones, they're incredibly sharp, so they would get through a lot of layers. But yeah, if it was extra, extra thick, like if it's 3-4 layers of denim, you'd probably want to do it that way. Yeah, this is more my style of quilting. It's kind of like lots of little scraps. I think that was sort of inspired by Camphor, where it's an Indian mending technique where you kind of work from the outside with running stitches and work your way inwards. But very, very loosely based. So yeah, if we do a basic embroidery one as well, I'll cover every different embroidery stitch I can. And one of my favorite forms of mending is just to do either blanket stitch or chain stitch to reinforce an area and put a patch in. Even though very different techniques, it all looks the same. Like a lot of my men's, I do like this, where it's just pure kind of playful embroidery. And again, a bit more kind of Sashiko type stuff there. And this is more of a borrow technique where it's just lots and lots of little bits of fabric laid on top of each other. So that's kind of a form of quilting. And this is a sort of similar to Sashiko, but a bit more messy and with a bit less of a formula, a bit more borrowy. And that's a reverse applique where I've put loads of different layers of fabric behind it, put them behind a hole and just done lots of running stitches to reinforce. And again, sort of more Sashiko based there with just the same kind of denim behind it to reinforce. And this is always one of my most popular ones in workshops, but just so simple to do. And again, similar type thing. So I think sort of coming to the end, if anyone has any questions or any things you'd like me to do next time, I've got workout Dorset buttons on my list and embroidery. So we'll probably do embroidery next time because I know I can do that without having to plan and experiment too much, especially when this month is a very, very busy month. Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. She said they look like little works of art and they would look great individually in a big white frame. And there was an event at Oakwell Hall last week, which I think a few people went to for the opening of the red dress. And there was someone else doing workshops there who had pictures of all things like this in frames. And I was like, actually, I agree, it does make it artwork if it's put in the right context. Oh, thank you so much, Estelle. That's really lovely of you. Right, and I think that is all for now. So I hope you'll have a really good rest of your day. And oh, thanks so much, Rosie. That's really lovely. Yeah, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week we'll do embroidery next week, and then I'll try and carve out some time to work out some Dorset buttons. Right, thank you so much. Have a really good day. Bye. Oh, Jean, that's so kind. Thank you. Right, where is the end button? Right, see you soon. Bye.